Okay, my name is Lorna Nichols, and I live in Milford, Connecticut. I'm going to tell a story that I've heard from my family about my grandmother's immigration over to the United States. I think she probably came in the year 1920, 1900, maybe 1989 or so, something like that. She came over as a 16, 17-year-old girl. And she had an uncle over here, Dan Troy, who lived in Stamford, Connecticut, and he sponsored her to come over to the United States. She got on the ship with some of her girlfriends, and she was in the steerage class, and it was kind of a rough going, but I think she was the type that had a really good time. She seemed, I don't know her well because she died when I was 4 years old, but the stories I hear about her was she was quite lively. So she came to the United States as a nanny, and she took care of children all of her life. We had a couple of interesting stories about her. One of them was that when she came to the United States, she met one of the Tiffany sons from New York, Tiffany Jewelries, and there was some kind of a love interest there. And it was shortly ended because she was Irish Catholic, and they're a Jewish family. Of course, that could never happen. And that was just kind of an interesting little story that she thought that would have been where she was going to end up, that she was going to marry that particular person. So she cared for children all of her life. She when she came over to the United States, she met an English gentleman, and she married him. And he had a father that was a sea captain who, from England, and I think that there was some kind of a minister, maybe an uncle or something, that was an English minister, Protestant, and had a terrible distaste for my Irish grandmother. And when they went over to England to live for a little bit, it was kind of a rough go. So they came back to the United States. The sea captain, who would have been my great-grandfather, had purchased land for my grandmother in China. And then that was certainly gone after many years when the communist government took over, so that land was taken away. But anyway, she married this Englishman, and his name was James Ninnis. And it was kind of a tough marriage back in those days. He left her and brought her to Canada at one point, and then brought her back to Stamford to live, and then he wanted to go back to England, and finally my grandmother said, no, I have one child, Evelyn, and we're staying here. So she ended up raising my mother all by herself. Hardworking woman. She unfortunately died when she was probably about my age. She was taking care of a family in Greenwich, Connecticut, and she had gone out to shake a rug over an open porch, and the porch gave way, the railing, and she fell and she broke her neck, and she died shortly after that. But when she did die, and she was, waked at the local funeral home, the funeral person said to my mother, "Who was this woman?" And my mother said, "Well, she was just my mother, And he said that they had never had so many people come to this wake for this woman. And he said, it was almost like she was a little dignitary, somebody with a lot of power or something. But she was just a wonderful Irish woman that had kind of a rough life, started rough as a young girl coming over to the United States. She plowed through, and she had so many friends, and she did so much for so many people that she left a great legacy to our family.